One of the most brutal and ruthless concentration camps of the Second World War was known as Mauthausen, which was found inside of Upper Austria. Throughout the many years of operation at the site, there were thousands of people who died and succumbed to their fate at the hands of the evil SS guards. There were many guards who drove prisoners to their deaths, and that was the purpose of Mauthausen, as the Nazis wanted prisoners to be killed by the work they were doing. Mauthausen became the most productive site of the whole of the Hitler's empire, and there were camps which were bigger. However, the prisoners were subjected to daily horror. The quarry inside of Mauthausen was where most of the prisoners worked, and then 190,000 people were locked up there throughout the 7 years that the site was open. And one of the most shocking parts of Mauthausen was the Stairs of Death. This was a huge and colossal structure in which the inmates were driven up and down many times the 186 steps every single day. But the stairs became an ominous sign inside the camp associated with execution and torture. It became an execution method in its own right, as the SS guards even pushed prisoners off of the cliff. Mauthausen opened on the 9th of August 1938, and the first inmates who were sent there came from the first camp which opened, Dachau, and the inmates were sent to specifically create a new slave labour site. It was built around a large granite quarry and was made there due to the different transport links to major towns and cities, and Mauthausen was close to Hitler's hometown of Linz. Specifically, inside of the quarry, granite was mined by the prisoners, and this was said to have been of very good quality. And the plan for Hitler was to use the expensive granite resource to then build many different buildings and pieces of Nazi architecture. By getting the prisoners to conduct slave labour, he was able to steal the granite for nothing and then use it. And this was why the camp became so productive in terms of the amount of money it was making. But along with the brutality and exploitation, the prisoners were worked so hard, the death rate was so high at the end of the Second World War, and the prisoners had a life expectancy of just a few months from when they first went inside of the camp. But the SS guards of the camp were those who were responsible for driving the inmates harder, and they pushed them to their deaths. Inside of Mauthausen there were slave labour facilities everywhere, and different factories were made too, and different German companies took advantage of the prisoners and the slave labour, and they used the prisoners, paying money to the SS for this. Some of these companies were making objects vital to the German war effort and the military, and the prisoners were forced to make things for the enemies. However, the guards continued to push through with the extermination through labour policy, and as more prisoners died at the site, there were many other inmates sent to Mauthausen to work. The conditions were truly terrible, as the prisoners were subjected to a huge amount of malnutrition, starvation and dehydration, and they were not given much food or drink for the work they were doing. The weather also caused problems inside of the quarry, as during the winter, the temperatures could get as cold as -30 degrees Celsius. But in the summer, the heat was boiling, and the inmates did not have the right clothing for the conditions, and this also led to some of them freezing to death or dying from dehydration. There was little to no medical care given out at the camp too, and there was outbreaks of diseases such as typhus, which spread quickly, killing more. And the only medical facility inside of Mauthausen was known as the Krankenlager, or the infirmary, and the staff inside of here did not give any medicine, just basic first aid to patch up the prisoners so they could work more. All of these problems led to the life expectancy of just 3 months. And there were also close by execution sites where prisoners who could not work hard enough were then sent to their deaths inside of the gas chambers. But the Stairs of Death was the most horrific and brutal part of Mauthausen, and this was a flight of steps which was known for its brutality. The Stairs of Death led into a huge rock quarry, and this was found at the bottom of the stairs, and specifically there were 186 large stone steps which were all uneven. The inmates were sent up and down the stairs, and they were forced to carry 50-kilogram stones up and down many times a day. They were forced to walk up them quickly, and groups of inmates were sent up one after the other. And it was brutal work, and the SS guards would whip the prisoners, sending them up and down quicker, and this caused accidents and led to problems. Often, prisoners on the stairs of death would fall and take down the prisoner behind them, causing a ripple effect of inmates falling over, dropping their stones. One prisoner who was forced to go up and down the stairs of death claimed, "Those who visit the Mauthausen quarry today don't see the same thing, for since then the steps have been redone, a real stairway, cemented and regular. At that time they were simply cut with a pick into the clay and rock, held in place by logs, unequal in height and tread, and therefore extremely difficult, not only for climbing but also for the descent. Stones rolled under our wooden-soled sandals, and we were forced to keep moving at a very rapid pace." The work consisted of carrying up a stone of considerable size and weight along the 186 steps, after which there was still a considerable distance to cover. The man who chose a stone found to be too small was out of luck, and all of this went on the rate of 8 to 10 trips per day. The pace was infernal, without a second's rest. The Stairs of Death was also an execution structure, and the SS guards played games with each other, and the prisoners and they embarked in one sort of action known as the parachutist wall. This was where prisoners were forced to line up one in front of the other, and they were then led to the edge of the cliff above the quarry after walking up the stairs. The prisoners were then told they had to push the prisoner in front of them off the cliff to their deaths, or they had to instead face immediate execution. The guards forced prisoners to make their decisions whilst a gun was being pointed at their heads, and the SS guards referred to the falling prisoners as parachutists. There was no way they would survive as they hit the ground, and the quarry many feet below them, and the workers inside of the quarry saw this sort of treatment most days. Other prisoners of Mauthausen who were subjected to the Stairs of Death claimed that if you stopped for a moment, the SS either shot you or pushed you off the cliff to your death. It was also said, for 2 days the SS drove the Jews up and down the steps. On the 3rd day, driven by despair, the remaining Jews joined hands and leaped over the precipice to their deaths in the quarry below. But inside of Mauthausen, other execution methods were used, and the guards also threw the inmates into the high-voltage electric fence that went around the camp, and many prisoners would be shot as they could not keep up with the expectations of their work. Some were even slaughtered inside of the ice-cold showers at the camp, but if the prisoners on the Stairs of Death heard a gunshot being fired, they would rush up the stairs quicker too, and this could create panic and then further accidents. However, when Mauthausen concentration camp was liberated by the American army in the May of 1945, the soldiers were told the terrors of the camp, and they learned about the treatment of the prisoners in relation to the Stairs of Death. Some prisoners did get their own back, and there were 30 who were killed by the inmates as they turned on them and sought vengeance. But inside of Mauthausen today, the Stairs of Death does exist in some form, as they have been changed to be more even and easier for people to walk up. But the quarry does still exist, and the terror of this site is still told as visitors flock to the camp to learn about the horrors of the Second World War. Thank you for watching, and to support, please subscribe, and again, thank you so much for watching.